Hi,
Hello.
hi, welcome, and thanks for joining us this Monday morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are around the world. I'm Carrie Fonte with Reuzel Education. We're so glad to have you with us. Today, we're joined by, I don't have any words. It's one of those Mondays. Today, we're joined by Bailey Russell. She's joining us from Wichita, Kansas. She's going to take us through our demonstration. Remember, if you've got any kind of comments, questions, thoughts, or feedback, just type it into the comment section. I will interrupt Bailey when it's a good time. She'll be happy to answer them for you. Type in there where you're watching from. We'd love to know where all of our Ruzel family is. And with that, Bailey, I'll turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Carrie, for that marvelous introduction. I've always wanted to say that from Hocus Pocus. Um, well, welcome, everybody. I really appreciate your time and attention this morning. This is my client, Kevin. I do want to make it a point to let everybody know that we do wear masks here. Him and I both got tested 48 hours ago so that I was able to take my mask off and he was able to take his mask off, and that we were both being safe within CDC regulations, just so you guys could hear me a little bit better. So I wanted to first and foremost say that because we do really, really value safety, especially in these times. So today, I've got Kevin here. I wanted to talk about his hair a little bit before I started. I've obviously looked at his head shape, looked at all of the different ways his hair grows, different growth patterns, and I'll tell you what, he's got dream hair. He's got very thick, very dense hair. It cooperates really, really well. There's not a lot of cowlicks that I'm going to have to push through. So basically, the plan for today with the haircut is I'm going to do a really nice classic pompadour using various techniques. I'm going to use the Reuzel systematic cutting and go from one side to the other. And if you do have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to try my best to be as clear as possible and for you guys to see the sectioning. So with that being said, the first thing that I'm going to do, let me turn him around real fast. And move the camera. There we go. So I'm going to start with my clipper comb, and I'm going to go from the top of the recession and section all the way back to the center back. Now, this goes right by above the parietal ridge, and it comes back all the way, and you can see there. This is called the baseline, and this is going to create a really nice guide for me. It's also going to create a really good square shape, and I do this on every single men's cut. You can use these techniques to make it shorter, make it longer. It's very versatile, and it's very, very consistent. So let me spread that. Let me turn him around. As you can see, it goes to the center back, and if I kept going on both sides, you'd almost see kind of an X back here. So I'm going to start on this side. Typically, you should stand right in front of your section. You should stand square, holding your wrist square. But because I do want you to see the sectioning, I'm going to kind of stand to the side a little bit, but just know that normally the proper way of standing is right in front of your section with your elbows up. Make sure they're not up or down because you're going to kind of follow that direction. So let me hop on over here. And I'm going to start right above the ear, right in the area that has the most space. You're going to grab your clipper comb and you're going to grab all of that hair all the way up. It's going to be parallel to your section, and you're going to pull that out at 90 degrees and make sure that your comb is also parallel at 90 degrees. Another thing, when you're going to cut your baseline, this is a very, very important part. Make sure that your clippers are absolutely flat against your comb. I'll start there and move towards the front. I'm not going to direct my comb out to leave any length. I'm actually just keeping it the same length. Follow your baseline all the way down to the center back, making sure that your comb is not squared, that it's actually slanted again, parallel to that sectioning. And I will tell you that I prepped him with the 3-in-1 tea tree shampoo. I did not use any conditioner on him today because I wanted to be able to blow dry his hair up. That way you guys could really see a nice silhouette and see a nice shape. In my water bottle, I always put a little bit of, just a tiny bit of grooming tonic and blue tonic. Blue tonic in the water for a little bit of slip, and grooming tonic for a little bit of grip. It really allows me to make nice clean sections. I'd say the grooming tonic has about enough hold. It's almost wind resistant hold. So it does help to make clean sections. So I'm actually going to hop onto the other side and create my baseline over here. Maybe look down, there we go. Again, normally I'd be standing right in front of it. I'm to the side a little bit just so you guys can see a little bit better. Scoop all of that hair up, pull your comb out at 90 degrees, allow the hair to fall out underneath. Whatever falls out underneath is fine. We're going to get to that later. Moving forward. Now, I didn't go and measure from side to side. I'm going to do that afterwards. I'm pretty good at this point at kind of just magic fingers, you know, making sure that it's measured out okay. But I always have to double check because that's what we do behind the chair. Following my sections all the way to center back. And at this point, I have cut the right and left side to kind of overlap. So if he kind of looks like he's got hockey hair right now, you know, you're right where you need to be. No, I can't see you guys, but I'm really, really excited to be on this video. I miss all my barbers and all my Reuzel team, and I can't thank you guys enough for sharing this content and supporting me. So
You've got a nice audience, Bailey, of viewers from around the world. There is a question for you, and the question was, when you're doing your baseline, why do you pull all the hair up, including the hair from underneath?
the reason why you do that is because, well, with him especially, his hair's a lot longer, and I want to pull all of that hair up, allow the hair underneath to fall out, because to be honest, the more hair you pull up to get in that first sectioning, I think the more accurate you're going to get. And if you could see, when I did my first clipper, it actually just ended up creating a really good shape as far down as the hair would allow me to go. I think it's just working, it's working smarter. I am going to go back in and go underneath, but you scoop it all up just because it just cuts better and creates a bigger shape, and you kind of do it more all at once.
Perfect. Thank you, Bailey.
If that makes sense.
It did. Thank you.
All right. I look at it as, if you're going to draw a line, it's easier to just do one swipe than it is to try to draw a line in sections. So that's kind of how I see that technique. So the hair on top, I'm just going to flip back and forth as I'm working on it, again with the grooming tonic. It's a little bit more pliable. So that's the cool hair on top. We're going to leave that for last. This next part, I'm going to take a 2-guard, and I'm actually going to just start from, again, right above the ear in the widest part of the head, and work my way forward and kind of create a shape that goes up and out, because that's a really good square shape. And then afterwards, I can do some detailing drying to kind of condense and get this ridge to be a little bit softer if I want. That's just a preference though. I also really like hard lines. I can't tell you how much I love these Babyliss clippers too. These silver FXs are so nice. They cut better than any clippers I've ever used. So I'm rocking up and out to preserve the length at the top. You don't want to go straight up to take away that really beautiful baseline that you've created. So rocking up and out, and at this point, I'm kind of just putting hair on the floor. His hair is pretty long. I'm doing it technically up and out to create that shape, focusing on preserving that great baseline. But for the most part, I'm just kind of putting hair on the ground. That way I can go in and custom and fine tune it later. There we go. Also, when I'm clipping the hair, I tend to keep my clippers parallel to that baseline as well. So instead of just using it and going square like this, I'm actually going in and tilting my clippers, but using that baseline as my guide as well. And this is actually a great way of clipping the hair, because if you go straight up the back and just create a square line, you're going to end up making more work for yourself when it comes to blending. There we go. Following through all the way past the center back. So here we go. I'm going to do this side. At this point, there's still a lot of blending and a lot of stuff to do, but putting the hair on the floor right now is my main concern. And behind the chair, you go back and cross-check and blend and detail at the end. That's actually one of my favorite parts. So there, I just got my baseline section. I'm going to follow that center back. Not to be confused with the horseshoe section. Horseshoe sections are a little bit higher, and they stop right here at the crown. So again, starting up behind the ear, and I'm just rocking my clippers out, kind of creating that expansion at the top and preserving that beautiful baseline. This side is typically my harder side, because I'm a lefty that was taught to cut hair right-handed. Shout out to all my lefties, by the way. I feel like only a lefty could kind of go back and forth like that, but there's always a side that's a little bit harder, and oftentimes that's the side I start on, because matching up your more difficult side with your easier side, I think, just makes it more difficult. So start with your good side. Bad side, my bad. Okay. Get some of this hair down. All right, next step, I'm actually going to put on a 1, and I'm going to open this up a little bit, because now I am going to focus on starting to do a nice blend and a nice fade. Now, I did blow dry the sides. I did not blow dry the top. I'm going to leave that wet, but I wanted to see how his hair was going to behave as it's dry, because It's very, very dense, but it's actually dense but fine. So I wanted to be able to really see how it's going to behave. That way I can go in and fine tune later. Doing the same thing, just with a smaller gauge here. A lot of people ask me, when you're doing clipper work, how do you know to stop? Like when is it too high in elevation with your clippers? How do you avoid cutting into your shape that you've created? And to be honest with you, I really just listen. I listen because you can kind of hear, when the hair is done being cut, if there's anything left. It's visual as well, but really the sound of your clippers gives you really good direction. And I'm starting to kind of hear the cutting kind of fade out. I'm not hearing any more hair.
Bailey,
Yes.
there's a question from Cole Palmer. He wants to know, how did you become a Scumbassador?
So I, here in Wichita, Kansas, was in a distribution center and I saw the Reuzel products, and for the first time, and immediately like a bug to a light, I just went straight to them because they looked so rad. And also I've loved doing men's cutting on my own. I've practiced a lot of barbering techniques. I didn't know much about Reuzel, and then I saw the products and I saw that they had a full men's line. Not only was the branding looking cool, so I started, getting online, watching them, and it first clicked with me because I thought that's my tribe. They're good, they're talented, they're a little bit rough around the edges, and that fit me well. So I started looking into it, and my husband was looking for just something fun to do, and he's a wonderful hairdresser as well. And I told him, I just saw a lot of men, so I thought, you should do this Scumbassador thing. They've got an audition in 2 weeks. I found out way late. And he goes, that's more your style. That's awesome. I think you should do it. And I didn't even know if they, took women or not, but I figured I've got 2 arms. I know how to cut hair. If it took learning new techniques, I could do it, at least go audition and see if they accepted me. And luckily enough, they did. So I went to Chicago and we did the 1.5 week audition live. And even if I hadn't become part of the team, that alone elevated my cutting technique so much. But I fell in love with the team. I fell in love with Reuzel. I fell in love with all the products because they do exactly what they say they're supposed to do. And it's a full line made by gentlemen for gentlemen, which is something I've not encountered here in Wichita, at a great price point. And between the product being so good and just their cutting technique, their cutting system that I literally use every day, it hooked me. So, and I was lucky enough to be accepted. So,
Thank you, Bailey. We love having you on the team.
All right, switching to the other side. I do remember Rob watching my audition video, and the only feedback that I heard about was, he goes, well, we don't cut like that. So I thought, well, that's true. I need to learn to cut. And what is it than to learn from the guys themselves, right? So I am turning my clippers a little bit just to almost freehanding. I'm not quite putting this against his skin. Just get a little bit of this weight out and to kind of soften that up. And I do like to pause and not talk over when I'm doing the clipping, just because I do like listening to my clippers, but also just from making previous videos and stuff, I've learned that I talk a lot at 1,000 miles an hour. And I remember Willie telling me, slow down, breathe, enjoy it. And that's been very, very helpful tip. In fact, I've collected so many helpful tips from all of you guys. So, all right, I put on my 0.5, and this is where I am going to really kind of work around this perimeter. So if you take your 2 fingers around the hairline, that's about the area that I'm going to be working on. Right, switching to the other side. I remember in one of Cheese's videos, he had said that the haircut he was doing was a lot like Meatloaf because it needed all of these different techniques in order to create what he was trying to do. And I feel like this is a little bit of that. I'm going to add a few of my own techniques when I'm going to customize. And he called it meatloaf. Here in the Midwest, we call it goulash, when you're making something that has a little bit of everything. At least in my opinion. Kevin here's a chef. He's probably like, no, that's not what you call it. What would you call something that a recipe that requires every single thing?
Oh, I think you said it right. Goulash.
Goulash, yeah. All right. So now that I've got a pretty good fade, let me see if I can try to make it to where my background was a little bit more white so you could see the shape I made right here. This side definitely has a little bit more bulk here. I'm going to address that here in just a second after I do his hairline. That's just how it is behind the chair. You go back, you kind of fine tune and customize each side. I think I'm going to do that with my shears. So at this point, I'm going to carve out a little bit of his perimeter. I always brush off all of those tiny little hairs because sometimes they're deceiving and could mix you up. So basically, the angle that I'm taking right at this point of the ear, I'm going to go straight down and just create a nice line. I'm not going to box them out or create a real hard line. It's actually just going to kind of disappear. That way, in a couple weeks, when his hairline's growing out, inevitably, the hair on his neck is going to grow out too. And I feel like when you kind of make that line disappear, it ends up all growing out together. So it doesn't quite look like a neon sign telling you that you have to get your neck trimmed so quickly. I just feel like you get more longevity. And really I know that you can't see many hairs here, but really kind of get behind the ear there. I feel like that's an area that's kind of difficult for our patrons to get on their own. There's not much hair here, so I am kind of carving out a nice square line, and I'm going to go back through and just smudge that out. Normally, when you're doing these techniques, you don't have to move your chair so much. I'm just trying to make it to where you guys can see, but it is systematic and from one side to the other. And I just really like that. I like that for a lot of reasons. you're not having to take your guards off your clippers, go to the other side. You're using your comb to get the baseline without a guard. You're doing it on that side. You're hopping back. You're putting your guard on. It's actually just cleaner and easier to work with. So now that I've created a nice line just behind the neck, I haven't gotten around his ears yet. I'm going to take my clippers. I'm taking the guards off. I'm going to push that up a little bit just to erase a tiny bit of that hairline. And I'm still going up and out. It's just in a smaller strokes, I guess. One thing to remember, longer strokes take off hair. Smaller ones are just kind of like, I think of it as an eraser. So it's for blending. If you're doing smaller swipes on the hair, the longer is again more for just cutting hair off. All right. Gonna get around his ear, which is pretty easy. He's got a really good hairline. It comes up pretty far above his ear there. Take that, bend the hair down, or bend the ear down. Go up and over. Make sure you don't cut into anyone's natural hairline. It doesn't matter if it's in the front, in the back, on the nape, or around the ears. You don't want to cut in to something that's a natural hairline. It's gonna end up growing out weird. You'll have like a garden of hair that just doesn't quite look right. So these trimmers are a little bit wider, so I do use the corner. All right, let's hop over here. Another fun technique too, if you ever want to just use one hand while you're working behind the ear, if the hair is a little bit longer, I have used the comb and also used my fingers to push. Let me turn him, there we go. To push the ear down and then also kind of go up and get around the ear. All right. Grabbing Babeless boulders. Next thing is really dusting him, shaving him nice and clean on the sides. And I actually do use them up and over the ear as well, as long as you've got the room, depending on the head shape and the hair growth, to get in there without actually cutting into your line. And if you had any sort of line left, this tool is really great to make it disappear.
Bailey.
Yes.
What brand of foil trimmer is that you're using right there?
Oh, Babeless. I mean, I use Babeless everything. I love these. They're heavier. They're metal. I love that this part of the boulders doesn't pop up. It's got a little safety guard on the side, but they also last. You charge them and they last for a long time, and they'll never just start dying or slowing down. It'll actually give you a little bit of a blink and a warning that says, hey, 20 minutes, I'm going to shut off. And that has been a game changer. Like, these tools are absolutely my favorite. They handle well, they feel well, it's metal, it's not loud and plastic. yeah, and I feel like I hardly ever have to charge them, and I do, you know, quite a few men's cuts during the day. All right.
Oh,
So
I asked you the wrong question. Rachel wanted to know the trimmer, not the foil shaver. Which trimmer did you use?
oh, okay.
Sorry,
So
Bailey.
the trimmer, these are actually walls, and the only reason I'm using them is because I dropped my Babyliss trimmers and broke them yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna try not to cry because I'm really sad and it's not the same. But I did get the trimmers that I was using were they're the ones that they're kind of an older model, but they have a real like nice T at the top. I can't remember what they're called, but they're Babyliss, and yeah, unfortunately I dropped them and broke off a little piece. So I'm using our salon, Eric Fisher Studio has got some walls, and so that's what I'm using.
we'll let you carry on. We're about halfway through, so I don't want to hold you up, so I'll let you carry on. And then if you can just let us know later, Rachel will let you know the exact trimmers that Bailey loves so much.
Yeah, yep, I will for sure. And honestly, oftentimes I'll just use these. I've got them zeroed out, and I'll use my Silver XF Babyliss Pros, and these actually work really, really great too. Okay, so perfect, halfway through. So now let me stand out of the way. So you can see we've got this shape that kind of comes up and out, a little heavy on this side. Again, this is my more difficult side. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to use my shears to kind of take some of that bulk out, but I'm still holding my shears and using them as I would my trimmers or I'm sorry, my clippers, where I'm going to go up and out because there's just a little bit bulk right under the baseline here that I'm trying to blend. But I don't, again, want to cut into that baseline because I really like the shape. So, sectioning that cool hair out of the way. There we go. And I'm just going up and out. And if I kept moving, my hands would go all the way up to the ceiling. I am standing right in front of this section. You want to move your comb as quick or as slow as you're moving your shears open and closed. That's kind of the trick with that. If I'm going fast, I'm going to open and close my shears fast. If I'm going slower, I'm going to slow down. There's no right or wrong. Just make sure that it's consistent. Now with Kevin's hair, I am going to give a little bit of a softer perimeter on the baseline because his hair is so thick. So now that I've got a little bit of that bulk taken care of, what I'm going to do ever so slightly just to kind of lift it up, elevate that hair a little bit 90 degrees, because when you elevate, you're going to get a little bit more softness, and this baseline will keep its structure and it'll keep its shape, but it'll also just collapse down a little bit softer. I'm always really conservative with cutting the baseline because I can always go back in and take more hair off, but I would have to completely cut that baseline short to start over if I cut into it, but I've done several times. All right, hopping over to this side. Again, getting the cool hair out of the way, combing that down. There's a little bit of bulk here, so I'm ever so gently going to take that out. I always start above the ear, the widest part of the head. And I use 8-inch shears because theory kind of goes with my whole drawing a line, not doing it in tiny sections. I actually really like these because it takes, I mean, it's longer. It takes off a little bit more all at once. So I feel like I can get a more accurate cut. There we go. Now, Kevin, do you normally, it goes this way, right? When you style your hair, do you normally go?
This way.
Oh, this way. Okay, cool. All right. Next thing I'm going to do, and this is just to kind of soften that ridge as well from the baseline. I'm going to take my blending shears. These aren't technically, I guess, your typical blending shears. I'm not even sure how many teeth they have on my chompers. I know that that's really professional, but use whatever blending shears you like. And again, same technique. Stay square in front of your section, stay parallel to your section, and just go straight up towards the sky, a little bit of elevation, and I am cutting ever so slightly into that baseline, but it's just it's just dusting it just so I can condense that so that it lays a little bit softer. These are also nice if you do if you've missed a part of the hair where you might see a little bit of bulkiness. They're really nice to freehand. So you can kind of go in and take off any bulkiness you want. I will say that when you look at something and there's a little bit more bulk and a little bit more hair, I mean, you can see with the color change, there's a lot of ways to look at it that we all know, techniques to look at, to kind of determine where that is. And you want to just keep in mind that it's never actually, the problem is never usually with bulk right there at that part. It's usually either right above it or right below it. So it's always good if you're really just trying to blend, just to kind of do a shear over comb and go upwards, and then it'll fine tune that for you. And if there is any left, just take that and I just freehand. Great. Leaving this long on purpose for now. Hopping over to the other side, maybe you guys can see a little bit better. I know with my lighting, it looks like I've got a pretty contrasting color change. Honestly, I'm exactly where I want to be right now. So I will definitely blend that out too. We're getting there. Make sure that you're combing the hair down and not letting it bend or dry in a certain way. His hair's kind of starting to kind of bend a little bit this way. So I'm making sure that my comb is pulling and to its natural way. Sorry about that. That was really bad body mechanics with me reaching over. Okay. So now I'm going to address this very front part. I'm actually going to grab my clippers and my clipper comb here. I'm going to comb this section down where the hair either wants to go up or it wants to lay down. It just kind of depends on the head shape. Everyone's a little bit different. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to clean this up actually. I'm going to take my comb, I'm going to scoop it up, and of course I'm going to pull it out at 90 degrees, but I might bend my comb a little bit just to taper to, again, just make this a little bit shorter to longer. Short hair pushes long hair, and I really like that at the corner because that short hair will kind of push that longer hair back and away from his face, and it just looks sharper. So let me have you look down a little bit. There we go. I'm anchoring my comb right on his hairline here. I'm able to kind of blend and get a good hold on my clippers and my comb and just make sure everything's looking good. But a lot of this is also, it's freehanding with technique. So there we go. It opens up that recession area just a bit. I'm going to grab my blending shears. Same technique, same angle, going up to kind of take some bulk out here. And condense the perimeter down so it lays a little bit better. I'm going to hop over to this side and do the same. It's very repetitive, but honestly, I use these techniques on every haircut, no matter if it's like some cool Euro mullet or if it's, just a shorter kind of pompadour, something a little bit piecier. I can always rely on these techniques to make the shape that I want, and then I can go in and customize them as I see fit. Now, I'm sure you guys can see this side is technically, it's slightly longer, just slightly longer. And I'm actually going to leave it slightly longer because he pushes his hair, he wears it over to this side. And even though there's not much of a difference, I don't mind that it's just slightly shorter over here, because then this hair can kind of tuck into this side and I can leave this a little bit longer. That's just a preference that I do. It's not like you're ever going to see the difference, especially when his hair is pushed over here. You add another layer of hair, so it actually kind of evens out and balances out. And that's, you can do that. You don't have to do that. That's just what I do. All right, now for the cool hair. Spray it down with a little bit of water. Let's re-wet this to get consistency. If you put grooming tonic in your water, I just want to remind you that it does make the hair a little bit more stretchy. So I just add a tiny bit, like really probably an ounce, just for grip. But if you add a little too much and you're using tension and you're pulling on the hair and you're cutting that, just know that you need to compensate for a little bit of that tension and that stretch. So have you look down for me. I'm basically taking from the recession back, I'm taking this triangle out of the way. And it's just the very front hair, again, from basically the apex of the head down to the recession on both sides. I am going to clip it for the time being. I normally don't use clips unless my patrons have longer hair. But so let's take that, flip this out of the way so you guys can see this a little bit better. All right, starting over here. All right, next move. I am going to go again right above the ear. I'm going to take a section. I'm actually going to get this part in the front out of the way and make a crescent moon. Let me turn my chair. From right above the ear to the center back. So now he's got a nice sectioned part down the center back here. And what I'll do, normally I'm right in front of my section with square in front of my section. I'm going to kind of get out of the way so you guys can see. I am going to lightly, not with a lot of tension, because I don't want this hair to bounce up, especially with some grooming tonic in it. I'm going to pull this down to the very top of my baseline. And with his hair specifically, I'm going to pull it down there and ever so slightly elevate my fingers. Let me see if this is a better angle. So combing this section all the way down, and you can take smaller sections. You can, I could do this in 3 sections, or I'm going to do it in 1 section because I do want to get to the blow drying part. And also, I can handle cutting that much right now. So I'm going to pull that down. I'm going to comb it down, pull that out, ever so slightly elevate. I can feel my baseline underneath. I always comb and kind of pull it out a few times so I can feel the slip of the baseline under there. I would rather overshoot and leave more length. I don't want to round that really beautiful square baseline out. So when you're combing, be gentle. Can you guys see that? I know my arm's kind of in the way while I'm cutting.
You're working it well, Bailey. It's looking really good. It's amazing that we're in the home stretch already. It's gone by so quickly watching you do this great haircut. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. Well, I really wanted to get to the blow drying and a little bit of PK too, because honestly, I think that the product and the techniques and even the importance of telling your patrons how to recreate their style at home, it makes so much sense and it's so valuable. It adds so much value to their experience with you, because if they can't recreate this awesome look at home, what's the point? And we are trained to give them these tips that are not very difficult. They're very, very doable at home, and it makes all the difference. So I wanted to get to that too. So I'm keeping it a nice basic pompadour. And again, I'm spoiled because his hair is a dream and cooperates so very well. So I'm not going to have to do a whole lot of extra detailing. Again, I'm still just kind of pulling this down. It's not so long back here to where I have to comb it and pull it. That kind of makes my body mechanics a little swirly anyway. So I'm actually just doing a shear over comb. Again, being a little bit more conservative back here because I don't want to cut into this awesome square baseline. And there we go. And now you can see, let me turn it a little bit this way. The baseline looks beautiful. This section is now blended. It's still a little bit of a hard contrast. I do kind of leave that on purpose because I like bold shapes. And sometimes I think that we take out a little bit too much weight, like weight's our enemy. And I think oftentimes it's not. There's nothing we can do about changing hair patterns. There's not much I know we can go in and take out a little bit of bulk, but in my experience, and really it's since I've been cutting for Reuzel and with the Reuzel system, one of my favorite things I've learned is how to actually just work with their natural hair texture, their natural weight, and weight works in their favor a lot more than I think we give credit for, in my opinion. So taking my blending shears, and I'm barely just kind of dusting this. Again, I'm going to freehand some of these pieces that are a little bit more bulky. And you've got to be really careful that you also don't cut into the hair too much while you're using your blending shears as blending shears and not thinning shears, which I don't like that word. But because the thing is that the teeth are facing up, and anytime the teeth are facing up, that's actually creating an upward cut. So, I'm really just dusting this. Now I am seeing right here, just right in this section, I'm going to take my clippers and do a little bit more blending. There's a little bit of a harder line that I discovered once I got this longer hair taken off. And so I'm going to grab these and I'm going to put maybe a 2 on there and just make sure, again, I'm following my baseline section. I'm staying parallel, and you can hear there was ever so slightly a little bit of bulk right there. Not too bad though. So at this point, I'm moving my clippers around because hair grows in different patterns. But I'm not touching it. I'm not cutting into this baseline. So I'm going to hop on to the other side and do the same. So here we go. Here's the other side. Let's grab another lefty problem. We always put our stuff on the left side when we turn the chair. It's always on the opposite side of where we need it to be. So, all right, right above the ear section, that forward. I'm going to section it forward a little bit more, push that. A little bit. So again, crescent moon section, I'm going up and around. At this point, I can honestly just push everything that's left to this side. If the hair was longer, I would do it in smaller sections. So I would stay parallel to my baseline, pull this hair down first, cut that, blend it, do another section, pull it first, cut down, blend it. In fact, let's just do that. So I feel that baseline. I'm putting my fingers close to the scalp. Not putting a lot of tension on it. He's got a lot of natural volume. I don't want it to pop up and have a nice surprise on my not so easy side. So combing that, I feel the baseline kind of dropping out. Cutting a little bit over that baseline in order to preserve some nice length and to keep it from rounding out and popping up. And I'm following with my finger position and with my shears all the way down that baseline that I started at the very, very beginning, which is awesome. I love that cutting like this gives you something to follow throughout the entire haircut, because before I was just using clippers to go up and out, and I felt like I was cutting into space. Like I didn't know, I was eyeballing it. And although, you can do that and there's no right or wrong, for me, this was a lot easier, and it was just nice to have a safety net to follow.
Bailey,
yeah.
there's a question. If you can keep cutting and answering, I know you're taking your time to explain things really well, but how often do you book for your men's haircuts at your shop?
So I used to book at 30 minutes. I book at 45 minutes now because, one, the pandemic, I don't double book anymore. I want to keep less people in the salon. And I would also, before the pandemic, I'd cut for 30 minutes. I could do the haircuts in 30, but then I'd use that extra 15 to either do some really quick beard grooming to make sure that their lines were great. I also really, really like to do education with PK. And although I can do that while cutting, we are a full service salon. So when you come in, you get your hair, I wash their hair. I end up I blow dry the sides. I do the haircut. I basically then finish it, but then I rinse them out and do style. So unless they're in a hurry and they need to go, which I can hurry up and get them out pretty quick, I do treat it like a high-end full service. And I've noticed that my men are very, very happy with that. Again, unless they just need to get out, and then, I can hustle. But 45 minutes right now gives me a little extra time. Ever since I started cutting for Reuzel, like, words got out. Like, it's been so nice. Everybody's been really liking my haircuts a lot more. And I don't think that men have necessarily had the same kind of high-end experience in my chair. Like I said, Reuzel has elevated my cutting skills, my understanding of men's cuts, and actually just being able to have a good consultation. So I do leave 45 minutes, and I like it. And I also needed to extend my times when I started using this cutting system because I was not used to it. And I wanted to make sure I was doing it correctly and learning it correctly and not worried about just getting through something and ended up with bad habits, I guess. So here we are, got a little point back here. I'm gonna grab my clippers again that still have a 2 on there and smudge out this line. I hope I answered that question well. And to be honest too, like, I really like just the customizing of doing men's cutting. So I like to really take my time, but I've noticed that a lot of my patrons have appreciated that. So 45 minutes, and if I get an extra 5 to clean up, and that's another thing, to really truly disinfect during disinfect, blade wash, all of that. I'm glad to give myself a little bit more. If I have a little bit more leeway, that's great, because I want to make sure that, especially during the pandemic, I am making sure everything's properly sanitized. Okay, pulling this over again. I've got one more section. I'm gonna hop over here. His hair's starting to dry, so I'm really not gonna hold with a lot of tension. Cutting that off. Now, the next part I'm gonna do is I've got to connect the back right here where you've got this real heavy base or heavy weight line here. Spray it down with a little bit of water and grooming tonic to get it evenly. There we go. Evenly pliable. grab my shears, and I'm going to take a vertical section right from the apex down to the nape. Let me get that out of the way, and I don't have much room, so hold on one second. Let me turn this. I'm going to grab this section, comb it out completely 90 degrees, but I also like to ever so slightly, my knuckles are actually anchored at the back, and I'm actually going to just lift up a little bit. This elevation actually, again, creates a nice, kind of just creates a softer lay. So I am pulling 90 degrees out, and I've got it pretty tight here. So I'm going to shift my hand up a little bit and cut straight down. Only because he has really thick hair, and that actually allows the hair to lay down a little bit better. Following that section up, I'm going to get the top of that section again, kind of shifting my fingers up to get slight elevation for softness. Cutting down, and then I'm going to continue to actually kind of take pie sections, slightly over directing, also still shifting up, because I'm going to keep his hair a little bit more wavy back here. And just kind of cross-checking. So now I'm just kind of pulling out where I'm seeing some of these weight corners and putting that hair on the floor. So I'm focusing on this weight line, shifting up, finding corners. You can also use this technique to shift up, and then if you want to do some deep point cutting, that's also nice. You can use your blending shears, whatever tools you'd like, shift up, and it's just going to connect everything together. Shear over comb, just to dust off the rest of that weight line. I'm still tilting and using parallel sections to my baseline. I'm not just going to go straight in and cut straight up. There we go. Pretty happy with that. So I'm going to take this hair down, push the sides over. Now I've just got this kind of tiny little section that's right on the parietal ridge. It's already laying down. I'm going to feel my base section. I'm going to pull it to it ever so slightly, elevate up. So I'm doing the same thing, just in a different area of the head. Combing, pulling that out 90 degrees. And it's just very, very, very subtly kind of cupping over that baseline. So I've got a nice weight line going up, again, elevating ever so slightly just to get that excess hair off, coming in at an angle to take that corner off. I'm going to switch my shears since I'm already over here just to dust the weight ever so slightly now that we've added in that section. And there we have it. I'm going to hop on the other side and do the exact same thing. So if you've lost your place, like I kind of had that folded over, recession back, there's your baseline. Pull that longer hair forward so I don't accidentally include it. Pull that section down to the baseline and just repeat. Make sure you're connecting it to the section you've done previously towards the back of the head. Now, because of how I can't quite get that square, I'm actually kind of directing, not meaning to, so we just need to be mindful of that. to your overcomb. And I'm just going to make my way around just to make sure that everything, all the weight's taken out and everything's blending. Because now we're going to go to the top. Okay. Let me clean you up a little bit. All right, you look like a different guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am going to still isolate a little bit of this front part here, just for now. Push that over. His hair sections out naturally pretty well. So now I want to make sure that the top is blended in with the back here that I previously did with vertical sections. So again, vertical section, I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. So here was the section before, right? Section elevated. So now I'm basically want to take a little bit of this corner off because of the density of his hair and make sure that it blends with the top. So that's what I'm doing. Just grabbing that section. You can see a little bit, maybe, let me stand over here. Right there, there's that corner. I'm actually going to take it off. His hair's pretty thick, so. Going straight up. I'm going to point cut in just a tad. Let that down. I'm going to leave the top a little bit longer on purpose. Just his weight actually works in his favor. So I'm taking sections that are just vertical next to it, almost like a pie section as well, pivoting from the apex. Pulling that up and point cutting anything that's left with a corner that I need to blend. As you can see on my good side, it was a lot longer over there, so that's why we double check. Now everything's almost rounded a little bit back here, and cross-checking real fast. Let's get these corners off so that when it lays down, it doesn't condense and look like I left a bunch of hair in the back that's too bulky. Cross-checking that. Okay, great. Let's move to the front and the top. This is actually, this little quick technique that I'm going to do is something that I kind of discovered on my own, and it works really, really well, especially when, if you've ever had one of your patrons sit in your chair and say, oh, I really like the pompadour look, I like that it pushes over, but my hair falls down. Or sometimes when all the hair comes together on the side, it kind of creates a flip or a peak, and I know that we kind of shave that off and blend it. However, as it grows out within 2 or 3 weeks, it ends up kind of pressing together and kind of creating like a tail. So I actually take a section, since he wears it over here, it's right above the recession, and I'm doing kind of again, a crescent moon. Can you look down for me? There we go. So you could do this and just blend this into the side, right? I actually kind of like to put a little bit of structure and support in there. So I take this tiny sliver that hugs his recession, and what I'm going to do is honestly cut it a little bit shorter. It's almost like a secret little undercut just for extra structure. So I'm pulling this forward, and I'm going to connect it to the front of this baseline, which is why I leave a tiny bit of length. And I'm going to actually cut this a little bit shorter on its own. Take another section here. And perhaps your patrons with finer hair doesn't have so much density, doesn't need this. But I always ask my patrons, like, what do you think of this? Did it help? What's your challenge? What could be done better? And it always seems like when they come back in this part, you know, this area is always a little bit more flat. So yeah, his recession is going to push that up. Again, I'm going to work with how his hair naturally grows. And I'm actually using what most people consider kind of a challenge, a calic, whatever. It's working in my favor. I've cut it shorter. I've created some structure. It's sticking the short hair up. And as I lay this long hair on top, it's going to keep it up for him. And it's going to take it's going to take care of all those other challenges of it coming in too long, not growing out well, and it's easier just to keep up because he wears his hair up. So if you would like, I don't think he necessarily needs it, but you can shear over comb just the very ends, just to condense and put a little bit of air in between that thick hair. So yeah, so that looks a little crazy normally, but there is a reason for it. And I'm only doing a couple sections. So now that I've got that put in there, you can already see when this folds over, even if he combs his hair back, that's going to blend. Or if he wants to wear it a little bit more forward, it's going to actually support some of that weight. Since there's not much hair left, normally you could take section by section. Obviously, if you're not sure, always take more sections, more small sections. So I'm going to do it with two. I've got the rest of the hair that was in that little triangle, and I'm combing it over. Take your time to really see how the hair is behaving, combing. It's worth it. And really, there's just a little bit of a point right here in the front. Kevin's got a lot of volume hair naturally, so I know that you could switch and go to the other side and make sure that it's also blending on that side. So if it flip-flops, it's blending in with the baseline, but he doesn't flip-flop it. He wears it over here. He's got a lot of volume, so I really need the weight of that hair with the structure that I put in on underneath this side here by his recession. All of that's going to come together and work together. So I've got lift and I've got weight. Taking a vertical section just down, basically down the center of his hair, just to make sure that there's no crazy line, and there's really not. There's a little bit of weight. Okay, I'm gonna get him dry real fast. And so that you guys can hear me, I'm just gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna start, I've put grooming tonic in his hair. I'm going to actually spritz him down. I'm gonna work from the back to the front. I'm gonna use a vent brush and kind of over direct in the front to get and leaf a little bit on the top. That way I can get a nice bevel. And I will try to listen, because if there's any questions, I want to be able to hear you, but I'm also kind of hard of hearing. So I'm going to do it really fast and just make sure you guys can see what I'm doing, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All right, here we go. Vent brush. A Denman works as well. Let's turn you this way. Go back and forth and direct the air so that it kind of flat wraps and bevels around the head. He's got a lot of volume here, so I really like to put my blow dryer right on that area of volume, and my block stat, I'm sorry, right here, and it will control the roots and kind of lay down a little bit more, because I want the focal point of volume to be in front. I just saw, all you can see is my elbow, so let me turn and see if this works a little bit better. Sorry, Kevin, coming up and around you.
Sure.
Working from the back to the front. Beautiful. Another section, pulling this back directly also incorporating the sides as I go. That's also going back. There's enough weight. Another section. So on this side, I'm going to try to make it to where you can see. I'm going to flip-flop again. Carrie, how am I doing on time?
We are a little long, Bailey, but keep going.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
How long?
But we're enjoying it very much. You're doing a great job.
Last thing you do, I gotta get it bigger soon. So I am kind of scratching for it and leaping up. And just with the grooming tonic, I'm really able to get some good shape. Over directing, pushing up. Okay, I'm gonna fasten that one up because he's got somewhere to be too. So now, without any product or anything in there, this is the result. Last thing I'll do is I'm gonna put some product in there and then I'm gonna let him get out of here because he's got his own video to make. Oh, gotta pick up the kids, okay. Like right now.
Oh, we're already past that. I've already got it.
Oh boy, okay. Sorry, I did not know I was getting close to noon.
It's all right.
All right, working that in from the back to the front, taking that residual, putting it over the top, and pushing back the sides here. And you guys can see where that structure actually lifts that up, right? Okay.
It looks great, Bailey. Thank you. And you gave all kinds of wonderful tips and tricks, and everybody was along. And you'll go back and read the comments. Everyone appreciated very much all you had to offer.
I can't wait. I've got a client at 12:32, and I'm going to be itching to read everyone's feedback.
Grab a couple pictures, though, please. I know you got to grab the kids, but just like Bailey, do 1 or 2 snapshots all the way around. It looks really nice. Thank you.
Yeah. There we go.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Bailey. Thank you to your model for staying a little longer with us. We're sorry. Thank you, everyone who stayed with us today and joined us. Bailey will give us a few pictures. We'll post them on the Reuzel Facebook page so you can see the finished look. And we're doing this again next week. So everybody, oh, Bailey, you have so much love from your Scumbassador family. You've got to go read them.
Thanks for your time and attention. I needed this. I missed you guys. So I appreciate it. I hope you guys took at least something out of that.
Stay safe. Be well. Thank you, Bailey.
All right. Thank you. See ya.
Bye-bye.